This is the Tapped In Podcast, the podcast for beverage distributors that want to empower their sales team to drive business results. Listen up and welcome back to another episode of the Tapped In Podcast. I'm your host, Bud. We also have Mikey here, co-host / Woodman this year. Woodman this week.
The man of the wild.
Where is Mikey now in the wild?
Yep, I'm still northern Michigan, out in the Maintenace.
Are you in a rocking chair?
I am. The camp chair, man. It's great.
Camp rocking chair.
Yeah, no, we're up at our property. So yeah, in the middle of the woods for a couple of weeks, and it's great. It's peaceful. It's relaxing. It's fun. So
update on the Starlink for everybody, because
Starlink. Yeah, that was quite the fiasco. I got really upset that it didn't work, but yeah, I got creative and I put the dish part way out in the federal land, which is kind of a little bit more open. There's a section that's a little bit more open. So 150 feet out in the federal land.
You don't need to admit that to everybody.
And then I have the router right on the property line. So I'm getting great service now, and everything's working good.
That's awesome. Well, good stuff, brother. I love it. Well, I'm glad that Starlink is working. Been reliable. I'm glad you're able to stay up north and be outside. Now we got a new background. You know, I look like I'm in a hotel. I'm in my home office, even though I look like I'm in a hotel, so not quite as entertaining as you are. But I don't have the bugs either. So,
well, and there's a little interesting fact. We found out that we have flying squirrels living in a tree right next to our fire pit.
We have flying squirrels in Michigan?
I had no idea. Yep, we were sitting around the fire one night and we heard a bunch of commotion, and turned the light on to see what it was, and they're really small. They're kind of a little bit bigger than a chipmunk, but they're gray and they're really cute little critters. And yeah, there's like 6 of them, so there must be a nest around here, and they fly from tree to tree. We have a bird feeder up, and they were just munching it like crazy. But yeah, super interesting. I guess they're really rare in Michigan, but we have them, and we have a nest.
No. That is incredible.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So they're just bouncing around from tree to tree.
Yeah, they're nocturnal, so they come out at night. So the minute the sun goes down, you hear them start scurrying around. We've been feeding them. They go through a whole bird feeder of food every night, but we've been feeding them because it's great entertainment.
So when they're down feeding, then they're nocturnal. They're coming out at night. They're feeding, and then they're just hanging out in the nest all day long. Then
I guess, yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah,
that's crazy. Crazy. I love it. Well, today we're going to talk about profitability and how do you grow your gross profit incrementally and as a rep. So I think this is something that we go through a lot and get into the mix around it while we're on site, Mikey. But today we wanted to dive, I think, a little bit deeper. And for those of you watching on YouTube, or if you do check it out on YouTube, we're going to start posting these in Spotify as video podcasts as well. We did that for the first time this week too, Mikey. So, you know, there's starting to be video. There's very video centric, which is cool. And we're going to show some examples and try to get some specific examples out the board. But let's get through a couple things of like, what do we mean by incremental first? So, you know, incremental growth or incremental GP is, to me, how you can make small, consistent, profitable improvements over what you're doing on the average right now. So for me, it's like, how do I move the needle by a few pennies or a few nickels or a few dimes? Because we sell millions of cases a year as a wholesaler, that adds up to many, many dollars. And contextually, this might be a challenge for a rep to start to understand at first, but once they see it in action and when we look at some examples, we can kind of run with it. Mikey, what about you? What's your vision or opinion around incrementality?
Yeah, totally. It's like walking into the gas station. You drove to the gas station to get gas. You walked into the gas station. You saw all the beautiful candy bars right there next to the counter, and you grabbed it and you bought it. They just grabbed some incremental sales from you because of the impulse buy. So yeah, the plus one, buying something that you really weren't planning on it.
So that's two versions of incrementality. They're incremental profitability and incremental volume, which is good. We should interplay on both of those as well. So let's do this, Mikey, first. Let's talk about the incremental profit side. I'm going to share my screen, entire screen. So here, this is an example I always love to go through where we're looking at single serve. So kind of VXP, volume times profit in action. So in our world at Atlas, we were a 35% single serve market driven around a lot of economy and core brands. So Bud Ice was something that like the sales team wanted to focus on and wanted to talk about and wanted to spend all their time looking at it because this was something that they made a fair amount of money on because we also paid them by volume. That's another feature function of this conversation too, is that we paid the sales reps pre-VXP on volume. And this is where incremental profitability comes into play for me, is that while we sell a ton of Bud Ice at $2 a case, or Mill Best for Molson Coors wholesalers out there, that isn't necessarily incrementally profitable. It's more dilutive, and it dilutes down your profitability on a case-by-case basis. So what we're trying to get to is how do we adjust the focus and grow that incremental profit on smaller volume items at a higher profitability ring. So in this example, Ultra, Bud Light for Atlas, or Miller Lite, Modelo for some Molson Coors wholesalers, and then ultimately up to some craft, like these two examples in Allagash and Voodoo. These were items that we started to get the team to focus on in growing incremental profit. And I want to have you tell the story, Mikey, because you kind of watched this firsthand around what you saw the team start to move their focus towards as they were thinking about adjusting their mix and what they wanted to offer and what they wanted to. I'm going to keep saying this word focus. We should turn this into a drinking game today. Focus on in the marketplace.
Yeah. So the reps, when they started focusing on gross profit and finding different ways to grow gross profit, you really saw everything change, not just mix on the shelf, but also signage. You'd pull up to an account and a lot of the signage was pushing all the low end single serves, 99 cent natty, or $1.09 Bud Ice, and pushing all that to where now you're seeing signage for Voodoo Ranger 19.2 or Beatbox or Goose Island, any of those items with higher GP to get the consumer to focus on. So yeah, and not just shifting signage too, but also where is it at in the cooler, and is it visible? Am I pushing it? Is that what I'm focused on? And making the low end shopper shop the bottom.
Yep. And the other ways that this plays out is not just in, the vertical of a style, or actually better said, size of product, but also the vertical of some brand, intra-brand transition stuff too. So in this example, we're looking at, a Busch Slide and a Mill Best item where we've got 30 packs, $4 to $5 a case in GP per CE, but we've got spreads intra-brand family on items like Mill Best, where you got single serves in the sixes, 18s or 15 packs could be up in the sixes. So maybe 6-pack 16-ounce cans or 6-pack 12-ounce cans could be in the sixes as well. And to me, the incremental profit move here isn't about stopping selling the 30-pack. It's about shifting 3 to 5% of the shoppers using that. You talk about shopper influence and how much influence we actually do have over the shopper, moving them to a different package with our merchandising and with our marketing and being strategic about it. So cooler stickers, what I put on display. We talked about this in our last episode around building displays, that, hey, we're going to build displays that are incrementally volume and profit driven, and those value shoppers and the best deal shoppers, we're going to go make them go hunt for it, like in those super suits, because I hate those super suits. And in another example here, we had this Molson Coors client that actually went through this with us, and they were a revenue model driven wholesaler selling $4 a case in GP per CE on Yingling 24-pack cans, and they were going to DQ the 18 packs up here, Mikey. And as soon as we showed the reps that, like, hey, there's quite a lot, I mean, almost double the profitability on an 18 pack, we moved the needle on the sales trends on those items upwards of 10% from a sales trend. So this delivered incremental profit and velocity to the client, and we got the reps to kind of manage the business differently. Because to me, this is just about where I'm positioning it, right? Like in this example, it's like, where am I positioning it? Am I paying attention to it at all? Am I marketing it at all? Because this is more of that volumetric side of an exchange, and what you're thinking about incrementality.
Absolutely, and the 18 pack is a great example of what to put on display. Like last week's episode, what do I want on display? Looking at the profitability of the 18 versus the 24s and everything else, that would be what you want on display. That's where you want to push the needle to drive some extra GP growth.
Mm-hmm. I want to go back to this example here, the single serve example that we experience at Atlas, and talk about maintenance versus focus, because this is a good example of where, you know, we still want to maintain and we still want to manage these kind of value and lower end items on the 25-ounce cans, in the 24-ounce cans in our market. I mean, it's 35% of our business, right? Like we have to.
Yeah,
So we have to maintain and manage that. But where I choose to spend my focus and my extra effort and my extra yeses, that's where the incrementality on the profit in this example comes. So we had a rep, Jared, who, took it on himself to say, hey, let's add 3 or 4 SKUs of this to the portfolio. He actually asked our inventory coordinator to buy them and say, hey, give me a layer of each, try some experiments and see how it goes. So he placed some Voodoo Ranger 19.2s in 3 or 4 of his accounts, if I remember right, Mikey?
yeah.
And
Urban
then
accounts too.
yeah, and then they did well. And then he kept doing it, and they kept doing well. And then other reps started to talk to Jared and see what he was doing and what he was learning. So then that expanded to an idea that, inspiration and experiment infected other reps' markets, and they started to play with it and they started to expand it. And at the end of 2019, there's a little historical reference point here. In Michigan, New Belgium was declining. We were coming off of our launch year. What year was it? Was it like 2015 was launch year?
2015 launch year, yeah.
2015 was launch year, coming off the decline of that, Rockstar first year, and, then a sophomore slump and junior slump, like just continuing to kind of its downside trend. And at the end of 2019, we were the only wholesaler in the whole state of Michigan that grew volumetrically on New Belgium. And it was really off the back of starting to understand the mix of what I want to maintain and what I want to manage day in and day out, and what I want to focus on day in and day out. And that piece of the puzzle is probably a really good way for us as a rep to start to understand, okay, I'm going to go out and I'm going to sell a bunch of my core items, a bunch of my value items. I'm going to move a bunch of volume. And those are the things I'm going to maintain and manage. Those are things I have to do because they're such a big part of our business and a base. Where can I incrementally bring strategy into the game through profitable decisions and volumetric, incremental volumetric decisions to grow my business? That's where I want to spend my focus on.
Absolutely.
Now, Mikey, when you're out in the trade, do you have any other good examples that you want to kind of take the crew through, or other good stories that you've seen out in the trade recently?
Recently, yeah, we've talked about this on a few different episodes, but really focusing on different packages, even within the brand family, and profitability on that. And that's again back to focus, what you want to focus on, what you want the consumer to also focus on when where it's placed at in the door, or maybe, with your cooler stickers or any kind of signage like that. So paying attention to what the profitability is on, 16-ounce 6-pack cans versus 12-ounce 6-pack bottles, to know where you want it to be in the cooler and what's double faced. And, same thing with, I always go back to Walmart and their saddleback racks, and those are getting set every Sunday, and somebody misses it, and they come to you like, hey, we have this open saddleback rack, or this open end cap, and we want you to fill it. What do you grab? Typically you would just grab your higher movers, your volume players, but think outside the box. Look at what's profitable for you. Look at what's incremental for you, and use those items, especially if it's a smaller, wing, or maybe a saddleback rack or anything like that. It's where 6-pack cans or singles of a Voodoo Ranger, or even the Ghost, or any kind of energy drinks that you have, using those opportunities for your higher GP items.
And this is where really knowing the portfolio comes into play. I understand the volume side of my portfolio. I understand points of distribution, pod side of my portfolio. If I make these items available, I can have an opportunity to sell them. The last piece, and kind of making a triangle and data triangulation, is what is the profitability of my items in that brand family or in that category of item, and how might I want to have all three play together is very nuanced. And if I can manage that and understand that on the fly, which you can, like, this isn't, it's complex, but it's not something that the average folks or the average beer, sales rep can't handle. You can really generate a lot of incremental opportunities, and you have a lot of fun with it. I think there's a lot of fun in doing this because you're relinquishing control back to the reps. You are taking control as a rep, and you're doing what's right in the market on the fly for the retailer, for the shopper in that store, without waiting for permission or asking for anybody. So you can use that, your sales tactics and your sales techniques to really move the needle forward, instead of just checking a box or completing a project or a survey or whatever else that we might, get into from time in and time out. The other side of this too is that incremental growth mindset. We've talked about this with a bunch of different clients from like the leadership side. So if we move, into that kind of management / leadership role, that kind of volume side of the business has been a real challenge and continues to be a real challenge, but there is an opportunity to still incrementally grow profit on a CE basis and on a total profitability basis. And for us, like, we were so focused on volume, it was like a doom loop is what I talk about. And we got out of that doom loop. Like, it was a snap thing too, right? Like, it took us like 2 months to feel like we have more control over this than we actually think we do. And we can get out of the doom loop and onto a growth mindset loop and start to understand how to grow profitability as a sales team incrementally and build momentum on that culturally. Did
Yeah,
you feel like, did you feel that shift on your side? I know I did from
absolutely.
my seat.
There's a breath of fresh air to put a slide up, in a sales meeting or a general meeting, and have green on the slide instead of red trends, when we're
Mhm.
constantly just looking at volume. And, how much did we decline? It wasn't, are we declining? It was, how much did we decline? And then when you shift it over to looking at the profitability, and knowing that you do have control over that, and watching it grow and be in the green, it's just so much more refreshing, and it gives you a great, outlook on going out and just getting it done that day.
This might be one of the things that made me obsessed with this whole process, and around, the cultural side of the transformation, around getting us out of the doom loop, getting people to think on themselves and move the needle in the right direction without us having to tell them what to do.
Yeah.
I thought that was incredible and awesome.
Even a lot of our clients too, speaking with them, and we're talking about focusing on gross profit side of things, and they always agree too. It's like, wow, it's really nice to see some positive numbers for once, so
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing what a little green and what a little fun and what a little bit of upward momentum can do for folks.
absolutely.
So in summary, I think the objective here for us is going to spend a little bit more time talking through what incremental, profitability stands out. It's like, hey, how can I drive incremental profitable decisions? How do I know more my portfolio? Where can I find those? Mikey, do you want to add maybe migrate towards kind of the incremental volume side of the discussion for a couple minutes?
Yeah, incremental volume is just as important. Without a volume, we have no gross profit. So never want to lose focus on our volume. But in the day and age that we live in now, where the whole industry or the beer industry is losing volume, and we're seeing a lot of negative trends, to do anything you can to push the needle on the volume side, displays, any kind of event opportunities, things like that, where it's still super important. And inventory, right? Backroom control, making sure that we're ordering correctly to sustain the volume that we need to sell. The shelves are full, the back room is full. So yeah, never losing focus on volume and looking for every single incremental way, whether it be display, whether it be new items, whether it be playing off of what's already working and expanding on that too.
And when you're thinking about what's already working and what's, how I can do more, you bring a good point about that, like volume adds to profitability. So there's always that interplay together. And to me, for our traditional like beer rep, you got incremental or synthetic volume opportunities in other categories than beverage alcohol, beer or not beer, bud. We're looking at, wine and spirits. We're looking at energy. We're looking at our waters. If there's any coffee, or even some of the other things like I've heard of beer distributors selling, pretzels and selling Mexican spice gummies and, chelada cups or michelada cups and all this stuff that is out there that are more, they're outside of the beverage alcohol aisle. So they're synthetic. So synthetic in my world is like, it's just fresh and it doesn't even matter because it's all new and it's all
Yeah,
grand and it's all big, right?
you bring up a great point too of thinking outside of the beer aisle, right? I mean, most of us have a great portfolio. Use it. Look in there. What am I missing? If I have my beer space dialed in, and I'm looking to still expand my business, looking to expand volume or gross profit or both. Where am I looking? I'm looking for in that NA category. What else do I have? What do I have to play with? What can I throw at them? Whether it be water, flavored water, energy drinks, whatever it may be, poppy, anything like that. Thinking outside of the box and not just getting stuck with blinders on in the beer aisle.
Yep. Yep. And then like that focus and that maintenance, I'm going to go focus on that non-alcoholic opportunity a little bit more than maybe what I did beforehand because the volume was so small, or because it didn't really matter as much, or because I didn't understand the opportunity as much as I do now, which is all fine. We
Yeah,
can all grow and learn and find new stuff
it's one
and
of
find
those
new ways to grow.
products we've talked about a lot, right? Where the volume isn't huge, so it kind of gets forgotten. You don't really think about it. You don't have your focus on it. But if you're at an account, you have zero NA in there, and you add splashing some NA, purely incremental comes right back to what's incremental. That is all incremental sales on top of on top of your normal beer order. Now we're adding all of these incremental NA SKUs.
Yep. I love it. So, a little bit of news today to finish up. We've got Athletic Brewing Company landed another 50 million in equity raise, led by General Atlantic, which is a private equity firm, and a board seat, and that's maybe roughly putting their valuation at $800 million, which is huge and incredible. That also marks two brands that have come out of nowhere with almost $1 billion valuations. I mean, almost two between the two of them. Liquid Death as well. They're valued somewhere between 7 and 800 million as last calculation too. This should be something we should talk about more in detail at some point. Is like these non-alcoholic brands. I know Athletic Brewing is non-alcoholic beer, and that some states treat an NA beer like beer. But these non-alcoholic brands, we should dive in deeper at some point. Like the beer distributor DSD world, we're like mint billionaires, right? And we get paid 2x gross profit or 1x gross profit on a termination fee. Like, is there a way that you can start to talk to this group around like, we're going to mint another billionaire here or group of them? Like, give me a break, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Just a crazy idea that, hey, I want to start a non-alcoholic brewery. Well, Old Duels is out there already, and the other Molson Coors has their version, and that this guy starts it on his own, crushes it, and now it's leading the group and just continues to blow everybody's expectations out of the water. all while the big brewers are adding brands and brands, and the space is becoming more competitive, and they're still growing. It's incredible, right, Mikey?
It's crazy. Yeah, if you would have told me about this 5 or 10 years ago, I would have told you you were nuts.
No
But
way. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
no way.
another great incremental play, right? Where are you at with your NA beer in
Yeah.
the account? It's obviously a category that's on fire. Take that opportunity and run with it, and make sure your NA beer section is well represented too.
Talk to the retailers, find that opportunity, sell them into these stories, read some of these news clippings as well, and kind of weave that into your sales tactics and in your discussion with the retailer as well. So
Yeah, and generally beer is pretty profitable. So when you get a little creative too of where else, we talk about what am I missing in the account, what am I missing, or what other opportunities. Think about with your NA events, special events, right? I mean, I guarantee you there is an NA beer drinker in almost every special event now. So do you have NA beer at your events? Do you have NA beer, in some of your good on premise accounts? And outside of old duels, maybe something craft or anything like that too. So all incremental plays.
great point on I always forget that. I mean, you ran all the special events and did such a good job of it. It's like how that special event game can really drive behavior into the off premise post the event as well. There is still an element of being able to do that with sampling.
Yeah, I even tried to sell in our NA beer to our local brew pub, who only sold their beer, and they had no NA options, and they had a lot of NA drinkers that would come in there and ask for something like, "Hey, take our stuff."
How'd that go over? I don't remember.
They didn't end up
Yeah.
taking it, but yeah, we tried.
I like the out of the box, the idea, the thinking. I love it. I love it. Good stuff. Well, Mikey, I think that wraps it up for another good episode for our listeners out there in Tapped In Land. Keep selling beer. Thanks for everything you do in the market for us beer folks and those thirsty beer people. And Mikey from the woods. Until next time, my man. Cheers.
Cheers.